Greetings, communities. 1, 2.
Comic Talk, and we're back with another Artist Alley.
Right. And, we actually haven't done this in a while. I want to touch on that. We haven't done this in a while.
It's been a little bit.
We've had to take some breaks.
Well, life gets in the way of living, as a friend of mine said.
So we want to introduce our co-host, Krishy Shin of Portor Studios, and
Hey, Superior. And hopefully Dylan of Dylan Comics will be in shortly. And along with that, last year I want to make mention that Kai and I started collecting about almost this time, but it was in April of 2019, and we were reading stories together, and
we started reading the same stories together and eventually began finding titles just for individual reads.
Yeah, right. And we began reading stories like Silver Surfer Black. That was something we were reading together.
Kanto was the original one.
That was another one we were reading together. We eventually ended up reading Dead End Kids by Frank.
Pretty Violent.
That's a great example. Pretty Violent. And then, I ended up reading, we ended up branching off and started reading our own stuff. So I ended up reading some of Christie's stuff, which, I had a first read before I ended up throwing it at Kai. And then I ended up reading Spider-Man Life Story. Kai ended up mentioning...
I ended up wanting Basketful Heads.
Basketful of Heads, right? And then, I was doing Absolute Carnage.
Black Label stuff is cool.
It is. And then I was doing Venom, and like Kai said, Kanto. But what we're about to talk right now is
a different story.
A totally different story. This is actually one of my favorite stories that I have read in the whole year. And the story that I am talking about is this story right here, Going to the Chapel. This is out of all the stories I read, I only pick it above all the other ones only for the sake that it's my flavor, my feel, and it just cued in with me. And I don't know, there was something about it that I liked, and to me that was my favorite read. So basically, what we would like to do introduce this writer, this creator,
David Pepose.
Hey,
and
hey, dude, what's up?
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you being here, man. So I would like to again touch on some of the things that you've been working on, and what I just made mention, Going to the Chapel. Now, you've been busy.
Yeah.
You completed and had the last issue of the comic series just arrived. What was that, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, just about. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago that the last issue came out, and then the trade came out, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so and in that time you've actually had that released. You've actually been to a couple cons now, haven't you?
Yeah, I just got back from C2E2 in Chicago about a week ago. And that was the first show that I've had Going to the Chapel's trade paperback out at, and the last issue. So it was wonderful. People really have been responding to this book. I think, to be honest, I think they've even been responding to it more since the trade has come out, which is great for me, since that's primarily what I'll be selling these days. And I mean, the book's been a labor of love for a long time, and it took a long time and a lot of effort to get that book out. But I couldn't be happier with how it turned out.
Now, this is considerably different from the project that you've done in the past, which is Spencer and Locke.
Yeah. The great thing about comics is you don't have to put yourself into a box if you don't want to. I think film and television, they always want you to sort of, what's your brand, sort of really narrow your focus and don't deviate from that. And comics are a little bit like the Wild West in that regard. And I feel like every project I want to grow, and I want to, develop new muscles with each new project. It's really the only way that I'm going to be able to stay relevant in the industry. And so, Spencer and Locke, the first one, was very dark. It had a very small, intimate cast, and it was, had a sort of a very, not the most diverse cast. And so those were all things I kind of wanted to tackle in my next book. And so going to the chapel, it is a crime story, but it's also, a rom-com, emphasis on the com. We've got a little bit of Western elements to it as well. We've got a cast of 15 people, and we've got, a female action lead and two romantic interests who are both men of color. It was a lot. And I feel like that's the thing that I think has really been so heartening for me as a writer, is seeing how many people have reacted exactly the way that you have, saying, wow, this is really different than what we thought you were capable of. And that's something I kind of want to do my whole career.
Well, Kai and I, we were saying, both you guys are great examples of the diversity in which that you guys write. Meaning, Chrissy, your sepulchre's a considerably far cry different than Demon Bitch. I mean,
I can actually write
ends of the spectrum. So I guess it's kind of like what Dave is saying. It allows you to, express yourself differently and work out those muscles.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be stories that I gravitate to more than others, but I feel like, these books are too hard to make to phone it in, or to kind of rest on my laurels. And so, yeah, every book that I'm doing at this point, I always want there to be something interesting about it and something different. The goal is to not go back to the same well too often.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. Now, you said you had a cast of 15. That kind of works out really nice because we've been doing this thing called Thespian Theater. So now I can already break down how many characters I need to do when we do one of these Thespian Theaters for yours.
Yeah, I think
I already know how many people there are.
It's at least 15. It might be 17 if you count the deputy and you count the TV news anchor. But yeah, it's a significant number of people all locked in that chapel. And I thought of it, in a lot of ways. Just looking at future career goals, there are a lot of creators out there who would love to dip their toes into licensed books and to work, at Marvel and DC. And I thought, this is no different than a team book in a lot of ways. I mean, you have, just to throw it out there, the Avengers or the X-Men or the Legion of Superheroes or the Teen Titans. These are big, sprawling casts. And so I wanted to have a writing sample that could show that I could juggle a big sprawling cast like that. And I think working with an artist as talented as Gavin Guidry, he was able to help me in terms of not every character got a ton of panel time, but we made every single appearance count. And I think that's a testament to Gavin's skill as an artist, to really kind of make the most out of every expression and really help sell every line that I put on the page.
Wow, it's very nice. I mean, it's perfectly put in the sense of that's how, as I'm reading it, one of the things that was tripping me out is in a lot of times you're kind of grabbed by certain writers by what they end up doing and leaving you at a certain panel right before the end of a particular issue. And what I mean by that is they'll either hold back a little bit of information or they'll try to shock you into going, I need the next issue. Well, that wasn't necessarily just the case with yours. There was partially those elements, but there were so many more elements that where you were going, wait a minute, I only had a little bit of information of this character that was first introduced 4 pages ago. I kind of want to know what was going on from there.
Right.
Not just that last panel that left me hanging on the last page.
Right.
There was so much more that I was like, wait.
I take that as already at the end of the issue. I take that as a big compliment. I when we wrote Going to the Chapel, and I guess for people who don't know about the book, I should probably give a quick high concept for it.
Please. Yeah, please.
Going to the Chapel is like Die Hard meets Wedding Crashers. It's about a bride who becomes the ringleader of her own hostage situation to get out of walking down the aisle. And I've always said it's kind of like if Quentin Tarantino and Arrested Development had a baby and then chose to bring that baby to a wedding. So the thing is that Emily, sort of our conflicted bride, she has kind of two choices in this. She's either got stick it out with her, her sweet but awkward fiance Jesse, or run off with her ex-boyfriend, who happens to be the leader of the bank robbing Bad Elvis gang. And when I wrote it, I thought, I kind of wanted people to be some people on Team Jesse, some people on Team Tom, the bank robber. But sort of you actually kind of put it on a finer point. I didn't realize when I wrote this that there were going to be people who, they like Tom and they like Jesse, but they really love Grandma Harriet, or they really love BJ, the best man, or they really, they really love Lucy, the maid of honor. And that was a cool experience, just finding that there are a lot of readers out there who really, really love the ancillary characters as well as the leads. And I think that's kind of the benefit of an ensemble jam piece like this, is that, like, there are some people, just to use an X-Men metaphor, some people are diehard Wolverine fans or diehard Cyclops fans, but then you got somebody who's really into Nightcrawler or somebody who's really into Colossus, and that's why they're reading the book. And it was kind of a cool experience seeing people, especially becoming Grandma Harriet stans. That's she was based on my grandma, so that I'm sure she's looking down and smiling on that one.
Well, whenever you put a shotgun in a grandmother's hands, you win me over every time. That's it. I'm sold.
Yeah, when you're saying sorry.
No, please.
No, when you were saying,
matter of fact, have you had an opportunity to read this, Christy?
No, I have not. I've got to actually sit down and read it. I've been like running the Kickstarter. I know that sounds like a shitty thing to say and be like,
Kickstarters are tough. I totally understand that one.
I swear to God, it's like if you're P.T. Barnum and you do it every single fucking day, you're just like,
yep, I know.
So
that
my brain has been mush for the last couple of weeks, so I'm still trying to get into recovery mode. Like, I'm like old lady, like I just like was lying in bed and I was answering one of the people that I'm working with for a page for a comic, and I just like passed out.
Oh.
So it's just like the mental stuff. You probably can relate to that, David.
Yeah.
It's like the mental shit. Like, even if you're an artist or a writer, you're just like, I need a nap.
I mean, I've always found, and you probably felt the same way running the Kickstarter. I feel like as a creator, especially when a book is up, in the market, I spend far more of my time doing promotion and publicity and marketing than I ever do the creative work. I feel like maybe someday I'll, if I get in with a bigger publisher that's got that kind of infrastructure, I can let some of that go. But I've always found that nobody loves your work the way that you love your work. And so nobody sells your work the way that you sell your work. And so I completely understand that, like, it is a mental drain. I was looking on I got a memory from Facebook a few weeks ago, and my girlfriend and I, we took like our first ever vacation, like real vacation together, about a little over a year ago.
Wow.
And I spent a significant chunk of it doing interviews for Spencer and Locke Volume 2. It's just, the hustle never stops. I totally get it. It's a marathon with no end until I guess the book is done and in everybody's hands.
Yeah, and even then, like, even after that, you find yourself talking about your work, and it's weird. Like, when I tell other creators, especially artists, they go like, "Oh, well, they just should look at my work and love it." I said, "Okay, look, there's going to be a million other talented people. You're going to have 30 seconds to talk about yourself. Most people would kill for this, so you need to talk about yourself and be enthused."
Yep, exactly. I learned that lesson pretty early on in my con experience. My very first show as a creator, professional creator, was New York Comic Con.
Oh shit! That must have been some simulation.
It was. I mean, talk about throwing me in the deep end of the pool. We had just announced Spencer and Locke, the first volume, and for those who don't know what that book is, it's what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City. It's about a hard-boiled detective whose partner's his childhood imaginary friend. And we had just announced it at the con, and we had some con exclusive covers that we Action Lab policy is to have those at a higher price point because they are a limited collector's item. Unfortunately, because of sort of a behind the scenes error, the price didn't get changed on the cover.
Whoops.
So suddenly we have the wrong price tag on this cover that we're trying to sell of a book that we had no idea that nobody knew what it was or who I was. And I had never done a con before. I didn't have a banner. I didn't have any prints. I just had these mispriced single issues of a book no one's ever heard of. And I watched. There's an artist whose name is Hoyt Silva, and I always thank him because I watched him, and he was so charming to people coming by, and he was always he's making conversation, and he had a banner, and he had artwork. And he was very smooth in the way that he would introduce people to his books. Now, granted, I'm not nearly as smooth or as charming as Hoyt is. I mean, if you guys do a Google search, he's a very handsome man. And Christy's like, let me look him up.
Hoyt? How do you spell his name?
Yeah, Hoyt. Yeah, Silva. Yeah, Dreamboat, total Dreamboat. So for me, Christy used the term P.T. Barnum, and that's exactly how I identify with it. I've practiced the high concepts. I've practiced how I explain my books to people, and sort of how do I say it in a way that kind of gets that spark going. And there's a lot of practice. A lot of it's muscle memory for me at this point. I always joke that I say it every night before I go to bed. But yeah, it's like Christy said. There's a million talented people out there. So just the quality of the art of your book, of your storytelling, that's almost a prerequisite. That's not the thing that's going to get you across the finish line. It's how you sell yourself and sell, your book that is of professional quality. That's how you you start to build a fan base one by one.
Yeah.
Right.
And also you kind of have to, I've noticed what makes a successful pitch too is like, if you think to yourself, if I just say this 10 million times, will I still find it as good as the first time?
Yep.
Because people will see that in you. Because when I write it, it's like, oh yeah, here's Demon Bitch. You want to read it? It's fucking angry and mean and makes people laugh. And it's about a girl I hate. And people are like, what? Because they don't expect me to say that, but I'll say it. But it's true. And then I'll explain what it is. But that's the thing. It's like everybody has their own touch. I mean, not everybody has to do it like me. Not everybody has to do it like any of us.
Sure.
But just like at least seem like you like your shit. If you just say like, yeah I got this book.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, okay, why the fuck am I wanting to buy it?
I found, and I've watched, I also, as somebody who's had the benefit of watching you sell books,
There you go.
I find that customers, if you have a pitch that can kind of make them chuckle a little bit, that helps. Like that usually means they get what you're saying and they're curious to say, okay, like how do you explain that? Like how are you going to put your money where your mouth is? How are you going to pull this off? You're not just saying random stuff to me. And I feel like that's a great way to sort of establish bonds with people and get them interested in your work. And, I mean, it also helps that, like I'm really fortunate that I work with really talented creators. I've worked with people like George Santiago Jr. and Gavin Guidry and Jason Smith and Liz Kramer and Colin Bell and Ariana Mayer and the army of talented variant artists that I work with. And, I'm the weak link here. I'm just the guy who talks. And so having something a little funnier to say, it sort of it takes people off guard a little bit, but I think in the best possible way. Yeah.
I think people like, if you make a person angry and sad, it sort of engages them. But I think the easiest way to kind of do it's like, okay, like what's bigger? You like thumb up your ass or your a whole and a finger? Like which is better? I don't know. Both could be great, but. Or maybe you could just say, hey, like the old saying, like you could go and attract flies with more honey than vinegar. It's like, okay, like you read a sad book, like, or a fucked up book, like Cross. Cross is a good series, but I can only read that fucking thing once in a while because it's just so depressing and just like The
Cruise
Walking
them
Dead.
over the
Right?
top.
Yeah, like in fucking what is it? The Walking Dead's great, but it's like there's only so much I can read of it at once before I'm like, God, I want to kill myself after a while because
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
constant stuff. And I'm not saying you can't sell comic books that way, but sometimes like the best thing is humor. So kind of people when they fork over their money, it's kind of like you're sort of you're just lubing up the area so that as inappropriate as that may sound, you're lubing up the area for them to give them the hard-earned cash, so you can have their money and they can have your book, and both of you are happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of both of you guys, you both end up writing things that are funny. So I'll start with you, Dave. Of what you write, what would you love to see become a movie? What would you love?
Anything. Anything that's got my name on it, I'd love to see it be a movie. Just with rent to pay. It's hard to choose between my babies, to be honest, because Spencer and Locke and Going to the Chapel and my my upcoming book Grand Theft Astro, they're three very different animals. And so it's kind of hard to prioritize them because I love them. I love them all equally but differently. And so that's yes, I would be happy to see all of my babies make it to some sort of screen. I know that's a cop-out answer.
I think with Demon Bitch, it's like she's the kid you like to go and put in the closet and beat up from time to time, but that's just Demon Bitch. And I'm sorry I went there. I actually do like kids. But it's just like Demon Bitch is like one of those it's the offspring that was born so malformed you just shove them into the basement every so often.
So you're saying you definitely want that to be a movie?
I think no, because I just want to see absolute garbage on the screen to see what would happen. Just to say, hey, I did it, and it's just this squishy, malformed dog turd, like just running around on the screen doing stupid shit, and to see what I could get away with.
Well, then, for Christy, who would you have play Demon Bitch?
Oh God, I don't know if I do a live action, just because that would be terrible with anybody. I mean, if I wanted to go and really, really capture the moment with Demon Bitch, maybe put Rachel Dolezal as her voice because she's a fucking piece of shit. So why not? And just even if she has absolutely no talent, that's fine. It's just gonna go and
that's even better.
Huh?
Yeah, that's even better if she has no talent.
Yeah. Demon Bitch movie would be Demon Bitch Does LA. Like, no, Rose, we already have enough venereal disease out here. No, she's a friend of mine. I told her to come on here and check it out.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, because I would imagine after a while when you're writing, you would at times kind of, if nothing else, kind of fantasize, about how would this play out in real life or animated or whatever. I mean, I would assume so. I mean, definitely Going to the Chapel to me read that. I've read certain things that to me can be easily, screenplayed. It can be easily, how should I say, just make the transition of just going from here to there that easy. You know what I mean? So reading Going to the Chapel read as such, meaning I can easily see this just, I mean, it almost writes itself after this as a screenplay to go write the shooting,
Sure. I mean, I'd love to see Chapel hit the big screen. I mean, I'd love to see somebody like Kristen Bell, playing Emily. I'd love to give, our shout out to Patton Oswalt, who is a big fan of our book. I'd love to have him in any sort of multimedia adaptation, because he didn't have to be a mensch and give us a shout out, but he did.
I could see him being the sheriff.
Yeah, I could see him. There could be a lot of people that he could be, and I'd be happy with any of it. I
think, sorry to interrupt. I was just thinking, so like with Patton Oswalt, I think it would just be, instead of you trying to hoe yourself off to him, he'll just hoe himself off to you to get a part in your movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, he
loves your fucking work that much.
Anything he wants, it's his. Of course, what's mine is his. But yeah, no, I mean, I've definitely, I mean, the way I tend to write is I do try to think of like, is there a character or an actor in pop culture, or a character from a comic or a TV show, anything that can kind of just help me anchor that voice in my head a little bit. Just to kind of help me figure out the rhythm and the cadence and the vocabulary. I know, for going to the chapel, for example, the sheriff, I thought a lot about Jeff Bridges in Hell or High Water. I thought a lot about Sam Elliott, just sort of that real kind of Western drawl going on. And, that really helped. That made me very creative with my cursing, for example, and so, so yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, it just to help me kind of establish a voice, and, but, I think so much is determined by the artists, and kind of their designs and how they work that out. I mean, I've said before that George Santiago Jr., the artist on Spencer and Locke, I had imagined Locke to be this kind of big, bruising figure, kind of like Marv from Sin City, and his imaginary friend Spencer to be this kind of thin, lanky panther guy. And George kind of flipped the script on it, and I think the book is all the better for it. And so, I would never have imagined somebody like, I don't know, like Joel Kinnaman, for example, as Locke. But now that the arts come in, I would love to see Joel Kinnaman play a live action version of Locke. I mean, he was terrific in Altered Carbon, and I think the characters are actually fairly similar. So, I mean, it's a moving target. I mean, I always think of things like Atomic Blonde. And if you've ever read the original book that Atomic Blonde was based on, the book, it's very dissimilar. You would not expect Charlize Theron to be playing this character. So things, they change and they evolve a lot, going from page to screen. And, I'd be excited to see, whatever Hollywood had in mind.
Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting.
Oh, go on. Sorry. Apologize.
No, that was it. It would just be, it would be very interesting. I would love to see it.
Hey, David, outside of entertainment, who influenced you or inspired you to express yourself in, like, written art? Written art.
Oh, written art.
Written art. Okay.
So, like, outside of, like, famous people, who inspires you?
There are a lot of comics people that inspire me. I know that's kind of a cop-out, but, like, when I first wrote Spencer and Locke, the thing that everybody used to say is write what you know. And I knew comics, and at first I thought, well, that's very limiting. That doesn't mean anything. And then I realized, no, you can kind of do this fun kind of meta deconstructivist kind of take on comics as a medium and their history. Classic Frank Miller is probably my biggest influence. I love the way that he plays with pacing and time. I mean, Scott McCloud talks a lot about how space is time when it comes to comics, and I think Frank Miller is kind of he's the proof of all that. You think of, for example, just Dark Knight Returns. That's kind of the first thing I always think of. The scene where Bruce Wayne is running away in the rain, and he has a flashback of his mother's death, and you see across, I think, 3 or 4 panels, his mother's pearl necklace breaking against a mugger's gun, and you are sort of trapped in that moment with Bruce Wayne, seeing that because there's so many panels of it. So yeah, Frank Miller is a huge influence. I really like Jeff Johns as well. His work on Green Lantern, his work on Teen Titans, JSA in particular. He really keys into the metaphors behind these characters, and so I like that. And he always
You're a DC guy.
Yeah, I got my start. I interned at DC in college, and so
okay.
It certainly instilled a lot in me there. Devin Grayson is another writer who doesn't get enough love, but she did a run on Batman that really kind of, very emotional, very sad, very character driven. That really has been a big touchstone for me. And I guess last but not least, Rick Remender and Warren Ellis, the way that they pace action sequences is really interesting to me. They're very intense, and they pack a lot of punch. And so Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey's run on Moon Knight in particular has been a big influence on me. They did a lot in 6 issues, and sort of these really off the wall action sequences that you almost felt the punch, when you'd see it on the page, and that's something that I like to try to emulate. That I think that'd be really cool. So I guess that's my influences.
Well, they go back to seemingly these late '80s, early kind of mid '90s type of
or like early 2000s, and then
jumping to there, yeah,
and I grew up as a '90s kid, so Tarantino, Kevin Smith, sort of that rise of indie cinema, that really I think got baked into me pretty thoroughly. The very first stories that I ever wrote as a kid, you could tell it was very influenced by Kevin Smith. It was very influenced by Tarantino, and and then I sort of grew into like Chris Nolan. Memento is one of my favorite movies. That was a big influence on Spencer and Locke. Those are sort of my holy trilogy, I guess, of directors, and that speaks to, of course, that particular generation that I grew up in. Those are the things that I kind of carried with me.
Gotcha. Wow. And yeah, I mean, I know that, like we were talking about earlier, that it's a grind, and for you to remain, focused and still be able to express yourself, and then sometimes it's nothing more than looking at your muses, looking at the people that you emulate, and go, wait a minute, what would such and such do in this circumstance, or what, what I mean? Yeah. They start going, hey, okay, then maybe I can just use that as my, something. Again, as I said, my to re-inspire or reinvigorate me to just keep going.
Sure. Well, and I think part of that for me also is, in case people are wondering, a lot of my concepts are kind of mashup concepts, and that's in part, it's a survival tactic. It helps me kind of keep myself inspired and motivated. If for example, for Spencer and Locke, if I'm writing a whole bunch of really bleak stuff and the words aren't coming, all right, maybe I shift gears to something funnier, something more like Bill Watterson inspired, to break things up. Or if, things have gotten a little too easy, a little too stable for the characters, I can kind of dip back into that Frank Miller well and really hit them with something like hard and unexpected. So yeah, I find that, having two very distinct points of inspiration kind of helps triangulate the story for me. Because that way I can kind of, if one track isn't taking me anywhere, I can switch gears and see if that will take me to the finish line.
Now, you mentioned a new project that you're working on. Can you actually give us a little breakdown on that?
Yeah, well, so Grand Theft Astro is it's a project we announced last summer over at Top Cow Entertainment. And I say it's like Fast and the Furious meets Back to the Future in space. I figure if, across human history, whether it's been horses or chariots or cars, if humans can drive it, they will race it. And I figured that would be the case for single person spacecraft as well. So Grand Theft Astro is the story of Hakeem Henriksen, who is the fastest star chaser in the galaxy. Unfortunately, he chooses to test drive his brand new experimental quantum supercharger in the middle of a race, and it accidentally tears open a wormhole and throws him 7 years into the future. So he's going to have to go on a high-speed, high-stakes heist with his formerly younger brother in order to find some technology that might bring him back home. So it's a fun book. It's my first toe into sci-fi. The book is written. I've written all 6 issues. It is done.
Oh wow!
We're just getting everybody's schedule aligned. I'm working with artist Jordi Perez from Queen of Bad Dreams over at Vault, and so we're just getting Jordi and Top Cow's schedule aligned. To sort of get the ball rolling on everything. But Jordi's drawn some pages. They look beautiful. We've got some really talented colors and lettering on it. So yeah, I mean, the release date on it is still TBD, but because the book is written, I imagine it'll be sooner rather than later. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. This is the longest book I've ever written. It's the most complicated book I've ever written, but I think there's still, a human heart underneath all the sci-fi action. And as somebody who obviously I like crime stories, but being able to take sort of a sci-fi time travel twist on it, sort of tap into my own, Fast and the Furious a little bit. That was super fun, and I'm very excited for that book to come out.
So is it gritty, or is it more comedic, or?
It is, I wouldn't say, it's somewhere in between Chapel and Spencer and Locke. Like, it's not a particularly gritty book by any means. It's definitely got the same sort of tone as, as a Fast and the Furious, as sort of a Star Wars, that kind of action. But yeah, it's fun. We've the visual aesthetic is very 80s. A lot of bright colors and yeah, it's really, it looks like nothing else I've ever put out, which is always something I'm trying to do. So yeah, I mean, there's that, and then I do have a couple other projects in the pipeline. We haven't announced them, but I can subtweet them a little bit. I guess I've talked about it in my newsletter, Pep Talks, but I have a book that I'm calling Project Saffron. That it's my first fantasy book, and I think we're about halfway through art on the second issue right now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it looks really cool. We just finished final colors of the first issue while I was at C2E2. It's really it's probably the best looking book I've ever worked on at this point. Although Spencer and Locke Volume 3, I'm sure will up the ante considerably. And then I'm working on another book.
So you just mentioned 3 projects right there.
Yeah, and I actually have a 4th one that's also in the works. So it's been very busy. Project Tagalong, that is in progress right now. We're still in the very early stages, but the book has a home. It's the first issue's written. We're just sort of finalizing who's going to be drawing it. But yeah, it's an exciting book, and that'll be bleak in a different way. It's a book that wound up being a little bit spiritual in a way that I wasn't expecting. So it's an interesting book. I'm excited to see who our publisher settles on to draw it, and I'm excited to finish writing it. I got 4 issues left to write, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm busy. Is the long and short of it. I got a lot of work. I got a lot of homework I'm working on.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You got a lot going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of projects to keep in the air, but this is the best kind of problem to have. This is the definition of a champagne problem. Like I've said, comics is not a sprint; it's a marathon. And so being able to have work on the long term, the projects that I pitch are always projects that I think have legs, that I can sell for, forever and ever and ever. Because yeah, that's what I want to keep doing. Cons are my favorite part of the job. If I could just do cons all the time without the pesky writing of comics, I would. But yeah, having new books, I've found, especially, doing C2E2 this year, I had 2 new trades that I didn't have last year. And seeing how excited people were, seeing people who I've met over the years make a beeline for my table, that's huge. I was not prepared for how grateful I'd feel over that. But yeah, I think, comics are, I know a lot of people look at the numbers in terms of, scale, in terms of tens of thousands. And that's the advantage of being indie, is I don't have to look at it that way. I see it as a person to person, reader to reader. You're doing it one by one. And I think being able to build those one-on-one relationships with readers, that's what makes you fans for life.
Well, at this point, I mean, I know I'm looking forward to this next project already, so that's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the way going to the chapel was, and as I told you, I haven't got to do Spencer and Locke yet, but when next we meet, that's definitely when I get to pick that one up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm.
It's a good series.
Thank you. We're hard at work on volume 3 right now. I'm still writing it. It's very challenging. We're tackling some of the biggest comic strips in history with this third volume. In fact, I'd say 3 of the biggest comic strips in history. And so a lot of research, and a lot of fine tuning to make sure that everything can kind of fit together in a coherent way. But I'm confident that when that's done, people are going to be they're going to be really happy to see George and I's swan song on that book.
Yeah, I mean, it's between all the projects that you're going on, it's interesting that you're able to keep all this in the head. I mean, I look forward to these projects, but I have found that when you start juggling like this, it becomes such a, like you said, it's a marathon and also a grind all at once. And I find like, I just want this person being able to do this because I enjoy the work so much. I don't want them to go, that's it, I'm done.
No, I that's the thing. I've tried every stable job. I hated them. So comics are not getting rid of me anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, that's why I consider outlining is so important to me. I spend more time writing outlines than I do actually scripting. The outline's always the hardest part for me. Once you've got that down, scripting is kind of like jazz for me. You play around, you see what dialogue sticks out at you. Oftentimes you kind of stumble onto bits of characterization and theme that way, I found. But yeah, I spend a lot of time writing outlines. That's usually the hardest part of the job for me. It was certainly the hardest part of going to the chapel. Spencer and Locke, Volume 2, I foolishly wrote it without an outline, and it took me like 3 times as long to write it. And so I'm a big believer in just write the outline first. Just get the story points down. And that helps me keep everything straight a little bit. Like that way, if I'm writing and I don't remember what direction I'm going, I just look at the outline and I'm like, oh, right. That's what I was thinking. Thanks for leaving me that note.
So you kind of follow that traditional outlining structure of you just do everything outlined and just fill in the gaps after?
Yeah, I mean, granted, sometimes the outlines change a bit. Project Saffron, in particular, I'm making a fairly significant swerve that's going to affect kind of the back half of the book, the back half of the series. So sometimes you do have to make changes just because you have to make changes. But yeah, I feel like sometimes that happens, so. But yeah, I tend to just write the outlines and I try to stick to them as much as possible just to save myself some hassle. But sometimes, I know there was a significant part of Spencer and Locke, the second issue of that. Only half of that issue was what I had written in the outline, and I realized, oh crap, I got to write another, 10 pages, and so the whole sequence of Locke having to cause a distraction to get into the boss's office, that was something that I just kind of had to make up, not on the fly, but like I'd started writing and I was like, oh, okay, what am I going to do now? And that's fairly stressful for me. I try to avoid that whenever possible. And having the outline, especially in the case of going to the chapel, really helped me from having to call major audibles, that would affect the trajectory of the whole series.
Well, you have a lot of characters, so yeah, I would imagine it gets kind of difficult and convoluted when you're sitting there just trying to do everything on the fly with so many characters.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Grand Theft Astro, that was it. Having that outline really saved me in a big way, because it's a complicated story. It's got time travel elements in it. It's got space and sci-fi elements in it, and So having that outline already hammered out, it meant I didn't have to work on the guesswork. I could just focus on the characters.
Wow. So, I mean, Chrissy, how's your method when you write? Is it anything similar to his, or?
I just kind of go with it. I just thumbnail a bunch of stuff. Because I kind of do it in a way like, it sounds kind of weird, but I'll just sit there and I'll just kind of like, it'll just hit me how to do it. And I'll just go through the stream as it goes. And then it'll just kind of be done when it's done. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I don't know how my brain is, but sometimes it'll just be like, oh, okay, X amount of pages of this. So it's not like forever in a day that I do it. It's like weird. Like my brain will say, okay, today's the day you do it. And here you write this down and you do it. But I mean, at least if somebody gives me a thing, okay, this is 40 pages or 7 pages, I'll fit it all in all those pages. It's not that I'll go on forever, ever, or stop short or something. But I mean, sometimes I work with one panels, like Demon Bitch is also an exercise, because it's like I'll think of something funny to say in a panel or a few and just draw it out. Sometimes I'll kind of think, okay, what can I do to kind of hit it home in this one panel? And sometimes I'll be like, I'm lazy. I just want to do one panel, so fuck it. I just want to do something funny in one panel. But then it kind of hits me. And I probably sound like the biggest jerk when I write or something, but that's how it works sometimes. And, you know, as I said, for the more serious stuff, I'd say probably I'd pan it out or map it out a few if I have a total page count that I need to work with.
But one of the things I enjoy when I get to talk to different artists and creators is that, you know, there is no set methodology. There's, as individual as the individuals I'm talking to, there's all these different ways of how they approach their work. You know, and it's an individual expression. You know, I don't think there is any set method for everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so much of it, I did a lot of creator interviews. Starting out, I worked as a reporter at Newsarama for a long time, and you're right. I mean, it's for me. I found talking to a lot of creators helped me a lot. You know, kind of establish my own process and my own voice. Because the thing that I always tell people is, you know, everything I say you might consider just to be garbage and nonsense, and you might not believe it. And that's totally valid. You know, I've heard people, you know, say all sorts of things, whether it's creative writing professors or other creators saying, you know, this is my process. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I think if you hear sort of a kernel of knowledge that resonates to you, you should use it. You know, I know I read an interview with Joss Whedon when I first started writing, where he talked about dessert first. The thing that you want to write, the part of the story that you want to write the most, write that first. Because you'll find that if you have enough of it, then you've got most of your story written. And if you don't have very much of it, then you've gotten it out of your system and you don't have to waste time on it. Or I think it was Greg Pak. I did an interview with him, and he was talking about how, you know, he read some story from Ray Bradbury, and that story was the first story that Ray Bradbury actually liked of his that he wrote. And Greg said it was like a light bulb went off. You know, I realized that I was allowed to suck at writing when I started out, and that I would just keep writing until I liked it. And that was really freeing for me too, is that it let me write a whole bunch of short scripts that were terrible, but I would learn something from it, and I would sort of build on that until I wrote something that I actually liked.
Just rungs on a ladder so you can eventually get up there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get your reps in. You know, comics are a marathon, and nobody expects you to get off the couch and run a marathon. You got to condition, and you got to build those muscles, and you got to really kind of learn how to run in a way. And so, yeah, I think, you know, those, you know, hearing different creators talk about their process, and really analyzing everybody's work and figuring out, what do I like about it? What do I not like about it? How can I articulate that? How can I incorporate that into my own creative process? Yeah, I mean, it's very much still a work in progress for me. And I still feel like my style, my voice, and my interests are growing and evolving. But I think, you know, the act of doing is what helps me sort of take those steps forward.
That's cool. So what we want to do is, so we made mention of the books. So the books that you've done, and there are Spencer of Locke, the other book that we made mention, which is Going to the Chapel.
Yeah.
And another book that's upcoming that you
Yeah,
still
Grand
have
Theft
yet to
Auto.
have a we have a specific date on, but you're saying you're hoping within the next around 3 to 4 months.
Maybe a little longer than that, depending on how long the art takes. But I would hope
Okay.
sometime this year. If not this year, sometime early next year.
Oh, okay.
But I guess
And then
my next, yeah, I might have something out by end of the year. Something else out by the end of the year. We'll see.
as far as your con schedule,
Yeah.
what's your con schedule looking like?
Sure. Well, it's all very up in the air right now. I was supposed to be at Emerald City Comic Con. They've postponed that to the summer. But I my goal is to still be there for whenever they reschedule. My next show scheduled is Planet Comic Con in Kansas City.
Okay.
And then following that, WonderCon in Anaheim. And then I think beyond that,
What's your
Comic Palooza in Houston, and then I think San Diego Comic Con is.
so
my next
what's
show.
your table number at WonderCon?
I don't know. I'm table surfing, but I will find out and let you know.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, I don't actually know what table I'm at Planet Comic Con either. But as long as the con is still on, I should be there. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Any future projects, Patreons?
Yeah, you got.
Yeah, no,
you got Patreons or other things that you're selling at like on your site or anything like that.
yeah. Well, I don't have a Patreon, although I should. But you can subscribe to my newsletter. I send it out every 3 weeks. It's called Pep Talks. You can subscribe at bit.ly/pep news. And that's where I talk about, work on projects that I've got coming up, what my next shows are. I talk a lot about writing process and I invite readers to send me questions. And I always try to end it with a moment of pep.
Go ahead and put it in the private chat here.
Yeah.
Through Restream, and then I'll copy and paste it and put it in the
Great. I will do that right now. Perfect. All right.
And then and the community can find you on the regular social networks such as Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Pepose D. It's my last name and first initial. You can also follow all the books on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We've got Spencer and Locke. It's just one word, all spelled out. Go to the Chapel, just one word, and Grand Theft Astro, also one word.
So what is it, Pepose D?
Yep, Pepose D.
Hold on.
Awesome.
Pepose D.
Yep, that's
All
me.
right, so now this is some of the fun parts that we like to do.
Sure.
So, Kyle, you got a few of these?
Do you play video games?
I used to. I'm very excited for Final Fantasy VII remake. I've got that.
Yeah, there we go.
Got that demo burning a hole in my pocket. I used to play Fallout 4 and Skyrim. I had to swear those off for the sake of my productivity. Yeah, I mean, I still love games that are self-contained and have great graphics and a cool storyline. Things like Detroit, Life is Strange, Until Dawn. I really dig the Batman Telltale series. I really dig all those. And every so often, some old school RPGs, Chrono Trigger, Shining Force. Occasionally, I'll let my girlfriend beat me in Mario Kart. Video games are kind of my kryptonite, so I try to avoid whenever I have a deadline coming up.
Do you ever go to E3 or want to hit that?
Well, what?
Want to hit E3?
Oh no! Oh heavens no! I did PAX East once, and that was like the worst. That was like the worst weekend of my entire life. I think I got like bronchitis from PAX East. So yeah, I don't get me wrong. If I ever had a book to sell at E3 or PAX, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I have found that unless I'm doing it for work, I usually would not do cons as a civilian anymore. I feel like they're very crowded, and I like having personal space. So yes, if I can avoid crazy crowds, that's why I stay on my side of the table every show. It's the only thing that keeps me from being claustrophobic.
I kind of missed con season a little bit, so I went to Costco today to go get some extra toilet paper. And no, not to stock up. I just needed to get some toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost murdered a few people.
Yeah.
It was like this, like, okay, it's going to be crowded anyway, even though I just went in. I know of like the people wanting to buy out shortages and shit, but it's really funny how, like, I went there and somebody was just standing there jabbering at their person, going like, you have a limited two. They keep saying, move the fuck out of my way.
Yeah.
So it's like, excuse me. And I like was an asshole. I just like not pushed my way through the line, but when the person was standing, I just pushed in between, grabbed the toilet paper, threw it in there. It's like, I'm done.
No, imagine the world's worst Trader Joe's, and that's pretty much your con microcosm if you have to leave the table. So I always appreciate con goers for navigating that crowd, because after over a decade of doing shows for work, I I have a little bit of PTSD about it, and so I like staying in my comfortable little nook behind the table. That's where I plan to be.
Yeah, I think
Anime Expo is by one of the biggest cons ever, and that is it's scary, dude.
Yeah, no, they're horrifying.
Fact.
San Diego, or which one?
The Anime Expo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's
a
nuts.
lot.
I'm taking this guy with me. He's forced to go.
Yeah, so we're gonna do what?
He's
3 days?
Yeah, no, it's 4.
4 days.
Wow,
He's
good
gonna
luck.
suffer. He's gonna wake up on the second day and be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
It's quite possible. We'll see. We'll see how much I can do.
Yeah.
So as far as comfort foods, what are your comfort foods?
Oh, comfort foods. I'm on a diet, so I'm trying to be better about my comfort foods.
Well, perfect.
You know,
what are the things you're not eating?
There's a lot. I've sworn off pizza. That used to be my big comfort food. I'm trying to think. My big comfort food at this point, honestly, I tend to still burritos. Those are my jam. If I really want to splurge, Lucy's driving down the street from me. That's my happy place right now.
All right.
But I think if I won't call it a comfort food. I'll call it a stress food. Doritos. That's like when I'm like really like redlining hard. Get me a bag of Doritos and I'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm kind of making this like South African cheesecake. Apparently, it's made with non-dairy creamer, and I heard it's good. So I figured Yeah, it's interesting. I'm doing like I'm too lazy right now. Well, after my Costco run, I just don't give a fuck because I already went to Costco to get the shit, and I just don't want to feel like going to that store. But I'll probably go to the grocery store tomorrow. But I'm making vegan condensed milk by Coconut Milk. I'm not vegan, but I just wanted to give it a go to see.
Sure.
And then it's like from South Africa. You have to get these things like tennis biscuits, which I don't have, but I have English biscuits that my friend got me a while ago. So let's crush those up. And it's just made with cream, not dairy creamer, but you can use, but we don't have Cremora here as much. So I'm just using Coffee Mate. And then I'm putting lemon juice and condensed milk and then mixing it together to see how that works. But apparently it looks really good. I've seen it done. I just like to cook. That's like how I kind of like probably after this, I don't know, maybe in the next 10 or 15 minutes, if that's okay, I'll probably jump off and like make a cheesecake and see how that works.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we're winding down. We're definitely gonna. I've got a couple more, like for instance, Red Vines or Twizzlers.
Whoa.
I guess Red Vines. I'd probably say neither. Really? I guess Red Vines. But
Nibs?
yeah, not a licorice guy.
Okay.
So can I choose Reese's instead? Like I'm gonna go for Reese's. Give me a Reese's instead.
See what pisses me off about those candies is they say, "Oh, it's juicy, it's fruit flavored," and I eat them.
No,
and I'm like, no, these fucking taste like wax. Like,
yeah, no, like if you want something fruit flavored, have a Starburst. Like
have a Haichu. That shit is like awesome.
Yeah, Yeah, no, but
Asian candy, so it's like, oh, this is fruity. Like,
yeah, no, red vines and Twizzlers. I don't know. I don't mean to disparage any Red Vines or Twizzlers fans, but that feels like a sucker's bet. I honestly, I might go hungry versus one of those two. Sorry, guys.
yeah.
No, yeah, that's fine. So I guess the last thing would be movies. What's the last movie you saw with someone else?
Last movie I saw was someone else. Well,
That goes for
I'm
you
supposed
too,
to.
Christy.
I'm supposed to go see Invisible Man tonight. I'm very excited about that.
Okay.
I think the last movie I saw was somebody. I saw Birds of Prey with my brother. It was fine. You know, I mean, it's not. It wasn't. It was a solid B-. I think. You know, like it wasn't like the worst movie I've ever seen. It wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. It existed. So I saw it. So I'm very excited for Invisible Man. I guess that should be my answer. I think that movie's going to be awesome, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it tonight.
Cool. And Chrissy, what about you? What's the last movie you've seen?
Oh,
Especially with someone else. You haven't seen anything in a while?
I haven't seen anything in a while. I actually did. I mean, I have. There's like a couple things on my to-do list. Like, I need to watch the Castlevania season 2, and I think season 3 just dropped. One Punch Man season 2. I need to watch those. I just haven't been in the brain space to do it, to like sit there and watch things. I did actually. So I kind of watched this with a friend. It was Chappelle's like comedy special, the one of the more recent ones that he did. So I don't know if that counts as a movie, but we were sitting there and watching it and laughing. But that was pretty much it. Other than it's like stupid YouTube shit. Like there's this one guy called Dean Packus, and he was like, he did stuff like back in 20. He does really, really fucked up shit. Actually, I actually connected him on Instagram, and he like likes every demon bitch that I put up. He thinks it's great. So it's kind of cool. But he did the more tamer Rats on Cocaine. You can look that up. And then he did one that was really fucked up called Father Tucker. Now we can go on that, and I won't say it here because I don't want to get flagged. But it's really bad. And then he did another one called Preemie Petey. So just watch those if you want to go and see your mind, and you just don't want to be around your children right now. That's how appropriate those things are.
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, Dave, is there anything else that you would like to tell the community before we?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
giving out your book.
Just that you
can. We're gonna do next.
Yeah, you can buy Spencer and Locke 2, and Going to the Chapel at your local comic shop, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Comixology. Anywhere comics are sold, anywhere you can order a comic, they can order you these books. And I always ask people, you know, if you have time to leave us a review on Amazon and Goodreads for all 3 books, it really helps us out a ton.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, community, tell me who's out there. Go ahead and just type in
any number, and I'm gonna punch it into a wheel, and we're gonna see who wins this thing.
Well, actually, you can type in anything. That way, I know who's out there and what you'll be.
Well, I want to know who to punch in, so put in just like a random number.
So, guys, wake up! You have to win free shit. So, is it number?
And
I'm sorry.
It's any number one. No.
All we have to do is to know who's in here. All we have to do is to say that you're in the chat. We'll put your name on a wheel, and we'll spin that wheel, and this is what we'll be giving out. This signed copy by Mr. David Pepose of Going to the Chapel. And the reason why we're all doing that is we have finally hit over 200. Now, Dave, last we spoke with you, we were under 200 people. We were sitting at 196.
Wow.
Kai and I are present at over 200, and I believe we're around 15. And I have all this story, in its individual form and signed by you, and those are mine. But this I bought not only to support you, but I'm dying to give this story out to the community. This thing is killer. So, community, if you're out there, we got a Dylan out there, we got Artist Rose out there. Who else we got out there? And so far, it's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
We can almost just throw a coin out there.
Dylan's
Mike, are you still out there?
Mike. Hold on.
Classic Mike. Classic Mike.
So far, we have like 3 people.
No, that because I'm one of them. So what we have is we
What? Why would?
because I am. So
No.
I'm just, but that's how I'm able to watch on the phone and I'm able to make comments.
Oh.
So we have Dylan and we have Artist Rose. So that's who will basically. You know what, Kai? You go get a coin. We'll flip.
No, Christy's in it too. Didn't catch that.
I mean,
Oh, Christy, you in there?
I just said sure, why not?
You want
I
me
was
to
gonna
be in
buy
the
it,
thing?
but it's like sure, why not? It's just like
All right, you're in also. Christy's in it. There we go. So Kai's got the wheel. This is the wheel that he's going to be
There's
spinning.
only 3 people.
That's fine. That makes the odds great.
That's really great.
yeah, Rose said heads.
There we go. This is our first wheel.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Where'd you get it?
And then Christy gets it.
You
Christy,
get the book.
you got yourself a signed copy. And I swear, you guys saw this is not rigged. I swear.
Well, you know, you have 3 big
Mike
pieces of plastic.
Yeah, he must have.
Yeah.
So, Christy, I have a signed copy. I can either mail this thing to you or I can actually just give it to you next time we see each other, which
Give it to me.
I'm going to more likely be picking up a copy of, your book when you have it ready. So maybe we can just do an even swap. I don't know how you want to do this, but
Yeah, like we'll talk about that too. It's like it's 90 pages of bullshit. That's my book. 90 pages of bullshit. God, I love like putting lighter fluid on Demon Bitch and just setting it on fire. Oh, Dylan was like #rigged.
I was waiting for it, Dylan. I figured you would say something.
It skipped right past him.
It
It went over him.
it was awfully close. So hey, community, we appreciate you. We're gonna let them go, but from us at
1, 2.
Comic Talk, we're going to let you guys go, and we appreciate you. Have a good
Thanks
one.
so much for having us.
Thank you.